Hey, it's Ed. Before we start, I've got a lot of brand new podcast supporters I want to thank. Emily Sinclair, Glenn Jeffries, PJ Holiday, Mike Foote, Justin Giavagnoli, Alex Hall, Bethany Bussa, Rebecca Wendell, Zach Buckaloo, and a really cool fly fishing company called Stonefly Nets. All these folks and Stonefly Nets signed up to support the podcast on a monthly basis through Patreon, which is very, very helpful for me and means a lot. So if you want to learn more about the options for monthly support or one-time support, go to mountainandprairie.com/support. Thank you very, very much. Hey, this is Ed Roberson, and this is the Mountain and Prairie podcast, where I introduce you to some of the innovative individuals who are shaping the future of the American West. I meet most of these people through my work in land conservation or through my hobbies and interests that revolve around spending time up high in the mountains. My guests include ranchers, writers, entrepreneurs, conservationists, athletes, artists, adventurers, pretty much anyone who's doing important work, has an interesting story, and loves the American West. My guest today is Luke Smithwick. Luke is a professional alpinist, ski mountaineer, and mountain guide, best known for his cutting-edge climbs and descents in the world's wildest mountain ranges. Luke is based in Victor, Idaho, in the shadow of the legendary Teton Range, but he spends large portions of each year deep in the Himalayas, guiding clients on remote peaks or pursuing personal climbing and skiing objectives on 7,000 and 8,000 meter peaks. He's currently hard at work on a multi-year skiing project called the Himalaya 500, which is his personal quest to ski 500 aesthetic ski lines throughout the greater Himalayan Range. Luke was born and raised in North Carolina, and he moved to Colorado for college, where he attended CU Boulder and studied environmental biology and cultural anthropology. When not in class, Luke immersed himself in outdoor sports and soon began working as a guide. First as a river guide on Colorado's Upper Arkansas River, and then as a climbing guide. After graduation, Luke completely committed himself to the mountains, and his adventures have since taken him everywhere from the Alaska Range to his current work in the Himalayas. His company, Himalaya Alpine Guides, focuses on trips to some of the lesser-known and less crowded peaks in the Himalayan Range, where his clients can enjoy completely unique climbing and cultural experiences that cannot be found on more mainstream, well-known mountains. Luke and I actually went to high school together back in the mid-1990s, and I was a couple of grades ahead of him. After graduation, we lost touch, but we've reconnected during the past few years, thanks to shared interests and common friends. I was so happy that he joined me on the podcast because I had lots of questions about how a guy from small-town North Carolina has become one of the world's most accomplished Himalayan skiers. We had a wonderful conversation discussing everything from his career trajectory to this season's climbing objectives. We talked about how he picks ski lines, how climate change is affecting the Himalayas, the unique nature of his guiding company, how he trains, why he's made his home in the American West, and his deep respect for the people, history, and cultures of the Himalayas. It was really great to catch up with my old friend Luke. I was blown away by all he's accomplished in the past 20 years, and I have the utmost respect for his understated, humble approach to life, learning, and adventure. Be sure to check out the episode notes for links to everything we discuss. Hope you enjoy. I left our high school. You were 2 years below me. When you graduated high school, where did you go? What was your next step?
From Virginia, I went out to Colorado and went to CU Boulder, and I studied environmental biology there and cultural anthropology. So I was out there for 6 years, and then from there moved up to Alaska for a decade. I lived in Alaska for about 10 years, and then moved to the Himalayas in 2010. And I've been over there essentially full-time since then. So
got it. And so when you were at CU Boulder, were you guiding a lot during college? Like how did you take the step from being an outdoor enthusiast, as I knew you in high school, to being a professional? I mean, what was that transition like?
Oh, freshman year in college, I saw a notice in the dorm that said, be a guide. And it was for trying out to be a whitewater rafting guide in the Arkansas Valley. And I applied for that and went down and started guiding that summer. on the ARC during the summers. And then at the same time during the school year, I started to lead for the CU Outdoor Club. And so I was just leading 14er hikes, sometimes requiring a rope. And that's really how I got started with mountaineering and guiding. So.
And was there a point during college when you realized you were like, all right, I want to make this my career? Because I imagine there are a lot of people that do that during college and they're like, yeah, this is fun and cool. And then they go off and, work at a bank or something when they get done. But there was some point where you thought, all right, I want to at least keep doing this. What was that point?
Absolutely. I think for a lot of folks, it's an avocation. You have your vocation, you have your job, and it's something people do for a hobby. But I think what really started it for me was the Scouts when I was a kid. That's what got me going into the outdoors. And then from there, I went on a trip with Colorado Outward Bound School when I was just before I started high school. And that kind of changed everything. It was very clear from then on. I was like, I'm going to pursue life in the mountains. And then I was rapping in at Woodbury. And then I was just looking for ways to pursue it professionally from there forward, while also pursuing a potential career in archaeology. And that's another story. But.
No, we might have time to get into that because I'd love to hear that. But as far as, so you're guiding in Colorado, and what type of guiding were you doing before you took off for Alaska? I mean, who were you working with and that kind of thing?
I was doing a lot of backcountry touring, backcountry skiing on Berthoud Pass and going up to Rollins Pass. And at the same time, I was guiding whitewater and rock climbing and a bit of mountain biking as well in the Arkansas Valley in the summer months, and then leading trips for the CU Outdoor Club during the school year. So that was kind of the extent of my guiding at the time, just because there is a bit of a tutelage for guiding. So. Oh
yeah, definitely. Well, I want to come back to Alaska, but I want to go ahead and talk about the Himalayas because I feel like there's so much there, and you've devoted such a huge part of your life to that area. When was your first trip to the Himalaya?
I took a break in 2001 from studying at CU and went over for 6 months. And at that age, the goal was kind of to travel as simply as possible on a budget and see as much as possible and experience as much as the Himalayas as I could. And that was really from glossy photos I've seen in magazines of the range, and from a professor in my hometown in North Carolina that came over for dinner one evening and just talked about religion there and faith and the way of life there. And I was just really intrigued with all of it. And I needed to go check it out. And so I went and did that, and came back from that, finished school at CU, and I was having a great time in the mountains there during my free time in Colorado and Alaska as well in the coming years. But always in the back of my mind, I was like, this is great, but I need to get back to the Himalayas. So I was always thinking I need to get over there again and pursue this more. And
so did you start guiding with some like larger guide companies, established guide companies in the Himalayas before you started your own guide company, what was the process there for you starting your own guiding service over there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started out working for large guide services in Colorado.
Yep.
And then for 10 years in Alaska, I did the same with heli ski guiding and mountaineering on Denali, and rock and ice guiding with a small outfit out of Anchorage. And so I really got a feel and understanding for how it works through those years. And I also met a few mountaineers in the Himalayas in 2001 that were running their own trips. I kept in touch with them. And then in 2010, I did partner with one of them, and we were offering our trips on the same site for a couple of years. And then from there, I went to starting my own guide service and have been going on my own since then.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look at what you do and the focus of your both professional and personal goals in the mountains, it seems like you're a lot more into going deep into the mountains, really understanding the range, understanding every little valley that most people, or some of these mountains nobody's ever even climbed, versus I feel like a lot of these major guide services now, they're looking at 8,000 meter peaks and that's it. and they're looking at big ones, 7 summits, kind of ones that everybody who's in that world has heard of. Whereas you're more into it seems like you're obviously into hardcore mountaineering experiences, but kind of off the beaten path. So when did that become important for you to really dig into the kind of the details of the Himalaya that other people may miss when they just come in and hit one of these 8,000 meter peaks?
I think people really like to pursue mountains they're familiar with, that they've heard of. So, as people prepare, they like to, chat with their friends. They were going to Everest. They have heard of Everest. This is, I guess it's kind of an important mountain of sorts. It is the highest and it's well known. For me, like going into the mountains is a place to get away from people. In these days, we have 500 to 1,000 people some years on Everest in a given season. So it kind of defeats the whole wilderness experience of going into the mountains. And some of my early expeditions in the Himalayas were to those more popular peaks because, one, it's where people want to go, and two, it's just most popular, simply put. So I realized, wow, if I could just go one valley over, there's no one here. No one's ever climbed these mountains. Why not go over here and check this out and have this totally different experience, which takes a lot of trust, I think, from people getting involved, because a lot of times they can't pronounce where we're going. They're like, I've never heard of this. What is this? This photo looks neat. Let's go check it out. So it's kind of fun that way. So the whole trip is really, it's really exploratory. So people really like that. It's not for everyone. A lot of folks want to have, like, you have an itinerary for an exploratory trip, but it rarely goes according to plan. So sometimes even finding base camp is a real task, because maybe you have no photos of the area and you have Google Earth and it's got this field of rock in it. You think it's a field of pebbles where you can build a camp, and you get there and it's talus, and it's boulders that are 4 by 6 or something, and it's not going to work. And how do you figure out where to base yourself to try to climb this unclimbed peak? So people really like that. So that's kind of how I got into it, is just this element of discovery. And, it would be a disservice to say that no one's ever been to these places we're going, because people have been thriving there for centuries, within a pastoral lifestyle, taking their yaks up there, and but not from a lens of bouldering or mountaineering or skiing. So it's kind of going to explore through a certain sport, if you will.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. So from a business standpoint, how do you go about finding clients that align with your goals and your values? Because I've been on some of these big mountaineering trips, to the standard big mountains, and some of the people who show up on these for like Denali or Aconcagua, they don't know what they're doing. And so that's fine on those mountains, and you can kind of get around it sometimes if you're in shape. But for what you're doing, the stakes are high, and you're off the beaten path, and it's the real deal. So, how do you go about kind of finding like-minded people, as well as like screening people to make sure that they can do it? Because you're offering a different service than what most of these guiding companies do.
I get a fair amount of emails from folks who are like, wow, you're what I've been searching for. I'd say we're a bit more, it's very small. There's maybe 30, 40 people a year that come over. So people either have already had an experience in the Himalayas before in the greater ranges, and they want something new and they want something exploratory. And so it's kind of what they're looking for, or just they're not really looking for a package tour. Maybe they're looking for more of a different experience. So I think that's why people come. How I find folks, I really don't. I just I build the trips and I put them on the website, and people seem to find it through searches on Google, for alpine style or for, Himalaya exploration as opposed to searching for Everest or something.
Sure.
Yeah, it kind of happens organically and word of mouth. So
no, that's cool. And these trips, like you doing these, deep in these ranges, I imagine there's a lot of logistics there that would require help from local folks who you hire. So how important are local relationships to what you're doing? Because it seems that one of the things that you seem to value is the cultural experience as well. So could you speak a little bit about kind of establishing relationships in those different cultures?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. I work with 5 guys, and 2 guys are from Tibet, and they now live in Manali, India. We try to stay together, working together year round. And then 2 other guys that are Sherpa from northeast Nepal, and then a cook from the lower Khumbu, also in northeast Nepal. We all work together to put together trips, and we try to stay together as policy allows in each area. Like some folks aren't allowed to travel to certain areas, but we try to stay together in that regard. In terms of locals, the local information is very important. Mm-hmm. So it's really, these areas are not like common. It's not like if we were going to go to Aconcagua where, you get a lot of people coming to climb it every year, and there's a well-worn trail and a path, and, there's like a infrastructure set in place every year to climb the peak. Like we'll go into an area in western Nepal, and we're looking for the sheep herds. Mm-hmm. We want to talk to the sheep herders because they know the trails to get up to a certain area. They know if the river's going to wash out and when. They know the local knowledge is tremendous to trying to figure out how to climb this peak from working with a shepherd to figure it out, and working with someone who goes up and harvests a local, herb for incense, they'll use for some of their Buddhist ceremonies. So it's figuring out all this information from sources that you wouldn't really otherwise do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it just sounds so appealing. I mean, in a way, it sounds like when you read these reports of the earliest expeditions, even to somewhere like Everest or K2 or something, I mean, that's what they were doing. And that's real adventure, I mean, I love that. And so guiding is obviously a big part of your life, and it's, it allows the revenue to pursue your other personal passions. And so I was wondering if you could talk a bit about your project, the Himalaya 500, because I think that just seems super, super cool and super hardcore. And it's, can you talk about where that idea came from?
The Himalaya 500, I put a number to it, but it's really not about the number. It's trying to ski 500 ski lines in the greater Himalaya range. And so for me, that would be this, I call the Karakoram a sub-range of the Himalayas. The Himalaya range runs from Pakistan across to Bhutan. Mm-hmm. So we got Pakistan, India, China, Nepal, and Bhutan. So through all those different areas, seeking out aesthetic ski lines. And a ski line is just a route to ski down a mountain. So I'm skiing them all human-powered, so foot-powered, hiking up or climbing up each one and skiing back down. And they're not all, some people have skied Mount Everest. They're not all iconic ski lines, but it's really just to highlight how much variety there is for skiing in the Himalayas. I really think the Himalayas are a destination and will be more so in the future for skiing across Asia. It's booming. China currently claims to be building 800 ski resorts. You have a couple thriving ski resorts in the Himalayas already, and I think that skiing can grow more there. I really do. It's kind of like the Rockies for Asia. So folks that'll fly in from Singapore and from Manila, because it's like flying from the East Coast to Denver. You fly 5-hour flight from there, and you come for 10 days or even a long weekend to check out Pokhara, Nepal. And I really think it's a destination for not only the summer but also the winter. I really just want to show the range as a ski destination. Mm-hmm. The variety of culture there is extraordinary. For example, in the past 4 months, I was just in the western Himalayas in the Karakoram, and within like a 100-mile area, you have people speaking four distinctly different languages, and the natural history, just snow leopard, and there's just so much to experience there. So you have this, like, you go out with this objective of climbing this peak or skiing this peak, but it's just all these experiences that you have along the way. I was talking about, the person going up to gather herbs or to take their animals up in the mountains, and just the way of life they're living there, and that strong connection to the land is unique to the area in its own way. And I really enjoy that. That's really what is most memorable about a trip. It's not that summit that you get to standing on the top of this cold, windy place. It's all the people you meet along the way and the experiences you have.
And so from a skiing standpoint, how do you pick a line? Like how, out of every, it just seems like there's unlimited opportunity there for lines that people have done or lines that nobody's done. And so what is your process for coming up with an objective that you want to pursue?
Oh, it's multifold. It's just, you've got the Alpine journals for, like, the American Alpine Club in Golden has the American Alpine Journal. So you've got photographs in there. And so maybe they put up a photo into their trip report, but then you see in the background, there's this beautiful couloir, so I'm always looking, you look at the edge of a film and you see things in the background and you're like, wow, what is that in the back? And it's also in my own travels, things I've seen. It's like, there's always something more on the horizon, and it's just file photos I have. And and also from friends who mentioned things to me. Have you ever checked out this? But yeah, I'd say a lot's from the Alpine journals here in the U.S. and also in Japan, Russia, also UK, the UK Alpine Journal. Those are all great resources for it. But also, I should also mention that the one in Japan is tremendous, and he puts out a monthly newsletter. That's Tomotsu Nakamura, and his research in the Himalayas is extensive and very impressive. So I think a lot of the research comes through the journals and just through chatting with other skiers and through my own observation. So.
Have you seen a big change in the amount of information available, just in the last, 10, 12 years? Because I'm sure we both share a lot of friends in the Southeast who are, obsessed with fishing, like saltwater fishing or whatever. And I've heard so much complaining from a lot of them that some of their secret spots are no longer secret because of the internet and because of whether it's social media or Google Earth or whatever. I mean, have you seen a lot more traffic just in the time that you've been there, and a lot more, people finding these spots that maybe it used to take a lot of conversation with locals and maybe even weeks of research, and now there's an opportunity to figure it out on the internet? Or are we talking about an area that's still so remote that doesn't really work?
I think I would say, like, here in the Tetons, that's definitely the case. And also in the Himalayas, in the popular areas, like in the Khumbu Everest region, I think that access to information and the infrastructure in that region, if you have all of these lodges and you have, you can create shorter itineraries, it makes it, and helicopters as well, it makes it more accessible to more people. So I think there has been a lot more visitation there, probably because of, social media, because of Google Earth, because of, there is more access to information, or there is more information out there. But I would say in the remote areas, no, it's still very much, it's like the difference of, in Western Nepal, we'll have to chop down the husks in a cornfield that's already been harvested and camp there, or we'll sleep behind the school. There's no tourist infrastructure out there. It feels like an expedition from 40 years ago. Whereas in the Khumbu, you have apple pie on the, each corner. You go around at the German bakery and you have Wi-Fi, and it's quite nice. It's just a different experience.
If you sit here and you watch the news, which I've literally quit watching news because it drives me crazy. But this is kind of this sounds like a dumbass question, but I would imagine that a lot of people are thinking it, because I do, even though I know better. But, when I see your films and your stuff on social media, I mean, you're in these communities and you're welcomed in, and you're obviously being super respectful, and they're glad to have you, and there's this mutual respect. But if you look at the standard news and you ask the average American on the street, hey, you want to go to Pakistan? They would their face would turn white, and they'd think, that's the last place in the world I'd want to go. And so can you talk about just how your experiences in these communities? Cause I'm not best friends with them, but I know a lot of climbers who've spent time over there, and they just speak so highly about the people and the kindness and how the hospitality. And it's the exact opposite of this nonsense that you hear on the news. So can you just talk about those people, whether it's Pakistan or any of these regions, and your relationship with them?
Great. I think our perspective is shaped by, the media that we choose to read and watch. And here we've gotten the information we have about Pakistan is that it's a dangerous place. I had a guest come this summer on a trip, and he's like, wow, I'm so glad I came here. Everyone I told, he lives in Denver, everyone I told that I was coming here, they're like, you're nuts. I can't believe you're coming here.
Yeah.
Or you're going there. And he's like, this is extraordinary. It's these everyone is so kind here. Pakistan is very clean. It's on a, it's booming right now in terms of development. Like if you go into Islamabad, into the neighborhoods, it's like you're in suburban Denver. Mm-hmm. It's wild. It's just immaculate and progressive. And then you go into the mountains, and it's even more extraordinary. The people are just so warm and kind and very community minded. Yeah. So I think it's just traveling to experience those places is, with the mindset, that one may have from media, it's definitely a mental challenge to take that next step and go, even though, it may say it's not safe there, online, or it says, but it's just not the case that I've found.
No, that lines up with so much of what I've heard from other folks who are in similar line of work to you. And it's just amazing how stark the contrast is when and if you don't want to talk about this, we can cut it out. But when you see, everything that's happening in Afghanistan right now, and it's changing by the hour, but does that affect any of your plans for this upcoming season, or is that far enough removed that it's not going to affect you?
I really don't know at this point.
Yeah.
I do have plans for Pakistan for next April, for some ski touring trips in the northern areas. Mm-hmm. I don't expect it to be an issue, but it is thought-provoking what just happened in Afghanistan. So,
yeah. Thought-provoking. That's a good way to put it. So, in all your time there, spending time, you've been going over there for nearly 20 years now. Have you been able to see any impacts of climate change? Because again, I'm hearing this stuff, I'm reading it third hand or through media outlets, but you hear things about glaciers retreating. And I just saw something recently. Some guys were doing a expedition on 8,000 meter peak, and they had to turn back because it was too hot. Like it was the first time that anybody'd been up there, and everything was thawing out and rocks were falling. They had to get out of there. What has been your experience with the region as far as the climate goes?
Yeah, I was there at the exact same time that those guys were there. I was one valley over.
Oh, really?
And
cool.
it was a 5-day warm period, but we did climb an 8,000 meter peak the week prior. So it was a snowy spring and early summer in the Karakoram, and then we did have a warm spell in that period of late July. But climate change. So I do expect in this century, we'll see an exodus of people moving out of the Himalayas. So the pastoral lifestyle that people keep up there with their yaks and sheep and goat, we'll see them migrate down to the plains, because I think we'll see glaciers, drying up. And so also with that, just really big events, flooding and Yakuhops, so like the glacial lake outburst floods. So as these glaciers in the Himalayas retreat, they're forming these lakes at the bottom, at the terminus, at the toe of the glacier. And those lakes release when the ice dam that forms them breaks. Mm-hmm. So, and that comes down in a big deluge of water and takes out the villages down below. So there's that risk that some of the valleys that have these GLOFs, they call them, glacial lake outburst flood, they're not willing to, have that risk. So they move out and they leave the valley. I think you've got that. And then you've also got consideration of like the Gangetic Plain, like the Indian Plains, like the water tanks, the water towers up in the mountains are the glaciers. As those mount out, there's going to be water problems, I think, in the Indian Plains as these, glaciers go away. Mm-hmm. But in the immediate, you got these glaciers in the Karakoram over to the west that are growing. They're galloping. There's one in the up in Hunza in Pakistan that has galloped, they call it, has moved down valley very quickly. Like I think it's done 4 miles in the past few years. So there's glaciers that are growing in the Karakoram that are a bit of an anomaly. It's kind of like, not to change the subject, but up in Alaska we have the Muldrow, which is also still growing on the north side of Denali. But, the general trend is, they're all retreating. Climate change and global warming are definitely affecting the Himalayas.
So obviously what you do requires just an elite level of physical fitness. So, I mean, you're out there doing it, you're guiding, I mean, you're moving every day, but like, what does your training look like specific training for the mountains? Because I've had limited experience at high altitude, and it has just absolutely destroyed me. Like when I come home, I've lost all this weight and I'm just torn up. And so like, how do you train? How do you recover? What have you figured out over the last 20 years that has made this a sustainable lifestyle for you?
Yeah, guiding itself is perfect. Because I think really, you do need to have a very good level of fitness to climb a 8,000 meter peak. So I have essentially been doing it since 2010, almost back to back each year. And so really just moving at a pace and maintaining my own fitness just through work, through my guiding. I am training right now for my own personal projects, which it's about 15 to 18 hours a week of like moderate intensity, zone 1 and zone 2 heart rate movement on hills. Mm-hmm. So fast hiking and trail running and a bit of mountain biking mixed into, and also rock climbing, just to stay fit for a larger project personal project I have coming up on a 8,000 meter peak in Nepal. I would say for below 8,000 meters, 6,000 and 7,000 meter peaks, I think having a general level of fitness is completely sufficient. You don't really need to train. So just doing something you like to do outdoors, 3 to 5 days a week is sufficient. So.
When I did Denali, I did it 1 year. And I trained almost as if I was training for a triathlon or something. And
great.
I went, and it was fine. I'll tell you the story later, but it was a shit show, and ended up having to bail pretty close to the summit because of a problem with the guide. Okay. but then the next year they actually paid for me to go back. And so I went back the next year, but the next year I did all the cardio and running and all that, but I also lifted weights hard because I felt like on Denali, a lot of it is you're shoveling snow and you're sawing ice blocks and that. And I found that strength training made it such a more pleasurable experience. Like when I came home, I wasn't just absolutely destroyed like I was. I think maybe I had more muscle maybe I was stronger, maybe I was just tougher, maybe I was just used to that amount of cold. I don't know, but I found that do you recommend that your clients do weightlifting as well, or is cardio pretty good?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because Denali is a exception for 6,000 meter peaks. So in the Himalayas, you go with horses, and the horses carry all the gear up to essentially up to 18,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
So like the highest camp on Denali. And from there, you acclimatize for a few days by hiking around, and then you can summit the peak. So it's pretty achievable for folks with a general level of fitness. Whereas with Denali, yeah, definitely strength training, doing some weighted carries, so getting used to carrying a pack and hauling a sled. And there's a lot of physical and mental preparation for a Denali climb for sure. So I do recommend that, and it's pretty it's definitely more specific. And if folks would be interested in that, I could chat with them about it.
Can you talk about your 8,000 meter peak goal, or is that something you can talk about, or do you like to keep those quiet?
Yeah, I'm planning for Dhaulagiri, which is it's 26,000 feet and some change, and we'll go there in early September and be there for about a month and a half, trying to climb it in alpine style. And alpine style just means we won't use oxygen. We'll fix we won't fix ropes. We're going to climb rope together without any fixed ropes, and we'll establish our own camps. And that's the style we plan to climb it in. And then we're going to try to ski from the summit and make the first complete ski descent of the mountain.
And who is we?
Ian Kuo is my ski partner. He lives across the pass, Teton Pass over in Jackson.
Okay.
And he summited Denali in June this year. And just came off 4 months in the Karakoram, and we're going to join forces and see what the mountain allows. We'll go present ourselves with the fitness we have and the preparation we have, and see what Dhaulagiri, what happens. Because Dhaulagiri is a tricky mountain. It really, it's either on or off. It has, if a big storm comes in and deposits gets a lot of snow there. So could have a big storm and really may shut down the mountain. It's really how things go and how the timing goes with our summit push. So I was just on an 8,000 meter peak 5 weeks ago in the Karakoram, the Gasherbrum 2, and we did have a big storm before the summit push, but we were able to get together and get to the summit. So
I'm laughing because you just say this stuff so calmly, and it's just like I mean, like the stuff you're saying, somebody could write a book about it, and it's just another day for you. I mean, obviously you take it very seriously, but like, how do you, you're obviously 100% committed to the process, the results, and your, if you look at like on your website, your resume, I mean, it's just ridiculous how much you've done and the variety that you've done. And there's some article that was written by somebody that said, I think the title was something like "The Greatest Ski Mountaineer You've Never Heard of." And so you're just out there cranking this stuff year after year after year, very humbly, very respectfully of the local community, and you're not spraying about it everywhere online. And this is my words. This is not your words, but there seem to be so many people that spend a lot of their time bragging about what they do. And then when you dig into it a little bit, it may not be as impressive as they're making it out on Instagram or whatever. So like, how do you, but you're a professional athlete. So how do you balance this? There is a need to promote what you're doing, and people are interested. Obviously we're going to have a lot of people listening to this that are very, very interested in what you're doing. But how do you balance that need for self-promotion with your obvious humility? I mean, is that a struggle for you, especially maybe the last 5 or 6 years as social media has gotten so crazy?
Man,
you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. I don't want you to.
Well, it's kind of, I think that there's just, people talk about writing books about it or doing this and that about it. And I just think if you're going to put something out there, it needs to have, value for humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you walk the streets of Kathmandu and you go in the bookstore and there's like 1,000 books about, my journey on the mountains or, whatever it is. And it's like, I don't see a lot of I'd like to write something someday about it. In terms of like social media stuff, that is part of my work for some of the companies I'm partnered with.
Yeah.
Mostly, what I really like about that part of it is the design. I really enjoy working on, the design of, a new tent or, making gear that's ergonomic for mountaineering and for skiing. So I enjoy the design aspect of it. The self-promotion stuff, I just haven't really sought the limelight, So I don't really know. It's just kind of what I do. It feels right. That's what I do. So.
No, I mean, and I think it comes through with humility. And I've noticed now that you've been back in the States for a few weeks, and you've been more active on social media. But I feel like everything you put up adds value. It's interesting. Like when I see what you're doing training, I mean, obviously I'm never going to be doing what you're doing, but it's helpful because we both wear the same watch, Coros watch, which I absolutely love. But like I see what you're doing as far as different heart rate zones, how long you're going out, and it's super interesting. And there's not any sort of arrogance involved in it. I don't know. I think you're not that you care or need validation from me, but I like the way I like the way you do things.
I think it's like it's not that exciting. Most of my friends, I do most of the training alone, just because it's pretty boring. You're moving at a moderate pace for long hours. It's just a lot of volume and hours each week, moving on trails and between bouts of computer work, I get out and do that.
Oh, why do you keep coming back to the West and to Idaho? I mean, I know that's your home base, but have you ever you come back here to rest and catch up and train, but have you ever thought about just living in the Himalayas full time?
Yeah, I have. And I really, what brought me back here was 5 years ago, I was a snow safety officer for the state of Kashmir. And Kashmir is a state in northwestern India, former state. And what I did for them was I ran a ski resort. So there's a gondola there that goes to 14,000 feet. And it's got 7 bowls there. It's like the size of basically like 7 Jackson holes side by side.
Wow.
And what I do there is we'd manage one of the bowls and place explosives and ski cut and remove or reduce the avalanche hazard after a significant storm cycle. So I do that, and I was doing the avalanche forecasting there and also advising the state on further ski development for the area because it's a tremendous resource for winter sports, what they have there, the mountains around there. But I was there. And to start the season there, I would be here because consistently the Tetons have an early season snowpack until the contract will start in early January. So I'd be here for November, December just to get my head in the snow, dig some pits and get back into getting ready to start the forecasting season in Kashmir. And so that's really how I put down a base here. I bought a house here in Victor 2 years ago, and I'm putting down roots here and trying to be overseas more in blocks now and be here the rest of the time. So make more of a home base here and go over just for periods of time as opposed to being over there full time. So I also, some of this, I've been mostly focused on 6,000, 7,000 meter peaks since 2012 and moving back into 8,000 meter peaks now. I need to be here just training the stimulus I was just talking about, doing a lot of volume each week for training to go and do these larger projects. Because talking to training coaches, they say, you can't climb peaks back to back all year in the Himalayas and expect to just go and do an alpine style ascent of an 8,000 meter peak. You need to come back to one spot and train the same stimuli, daily. So that's part of it too. So
it's hard for me to believe that. I guess I'm 43, so I guess that means you're 41. How is your training, or how has your body reacted as you've gotten older? I can't believe we're having this damn conversation talking about being old, but like as you've gotten up there in your 40s. I mean, how has your body reacted to that? I mean, you're obviously in top shape, and you look at like world-class ultra runners, and some of the best ones are older. So like, is your body, are you getting better at it? Are you feeling your age? I mean, how does that working out for you?
I don't feel it at all.
That's awesome.
There's folks around here that, they're in their 60s and you see them just cranking in zone 2 because they've done it their whole life. They've done it 30, 40 years, And as a mountain guide, you're doing it every day. You're moving in zone 2 conversation pace all day long, every day. So I've essentially, quote unquote, been training, since I answered that little sheet in the dorm when I was 18 in Colorado to be a guide. I've been, in zone 2 since then, hiking up and down hills. And so it's just having a bit more focus to it now with a trainer to structure things more. And, no, I don't see any reduction with age. I still have the same recovery times. And after a big expedition like I just did, I do notice the first couple of weeks that, the heart rate's a bit elevated at night and things, which is normal after a big climb. But no, it feels good right now. Just because it's not, it's not race pace. There's some mountain bike racers around here and trail running racers, and, they're running at, zone 3, like aerobic heart rates to win these races. And I'm not really doing that. I'm moving at a, far lower heart rate for just, 24 or even 36 hours in a go. So it's a different deal. So,
yeah. That's one of the inspiring things about doing these mountain sports is that, for the most part, it's slow and steady, constant. And I feel like if there's one thing we humans are good at from a physical standpoint, that's it. Like being able to go for, literally days at a time, as long as you got enough food, at that pace. And I would have never thought that, when I was 18 or, at Woodbury or whatever, playing team sports and running was punishment. I would have never thought you could find so much pleasure in slow and steady for long periods of time.
It's not for everyone,
Yeah. I think being a bit, you said you do a lot of it alone, and I'm a huge introvert. People don't realize that because I'm always on this yapping on this podcast, but I love being alone. Are you an introvert? Do you know?
I would say I'm an introverted extrovert.
Yeah.
I love, I love, talking to folks, learning about other people's lives and sharing with other folks. But yeah, I'm quite content being alone as well. So
you mentioned that your folks are out there. Before we started recording, you said your folks are visiting. What do they think about this really awesome life that you've created for yourself? Because you and I, we went to boarding school together, but we grew up in very similar towns. You're in Laurenberger. I'm in the big city of Tarboro, and pretty similar places in a lot of ways. And there aren't many professional ski mountaineers coming out of Tarboro or Laurenberg. So what do they think? I mean, what do they think about their son?
My dad was in Vietnam, and they were over in Asia. They've traveled to Kathmandu in the 60s and to India as well. So they know the area, and they understand my passion for culture and things, and why I'm so keen on, learning as much as I can about the place more and more. And so, they've always been very supportive of what I want to pursue. And I'm still trying to get them over there. We'll see how things go with the current pandemic. But, I'd like to get them over there to experience the place. So, yeah.
And this is more just for me, and people who are listening are probably gonna be like, what is this guy talking about? But I'm curious about it. What is it about Laurenberg that creates these interesting people? Because you got you doing your thing. You got McNair Evans, our mutual friend McNair Evans, who has turned into just this unbelievably acclaimed professional photographer out in California. And then like our mutual friend Van King had this career in banking, and he said, no thanks, I don't want to do that. And he went and pursued his passion, running this, really great summer camp. And so it seems like those are three examples of people who have completely forged their own path, done what they wanted to do, not followed the normal way of doing things. I mean, can you trace that to something in Laurenberger, or is it just happenstance?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was Boy Scouts.
Really?
Yeah, all the way. Yeah, David Harling was the scout leader, and to expose us to the closest, hills to Laurenberg was the Uwharrie mountain range.
Mm-hmm.
We go in the Uwharries and backpack, and just that exposure to the outdoors and all it provides at a young age was huge. Yeah, and some people pursue that to varying degrees on the weekend, or they go and do tons of expeditions in the Himalayas. It was definitely, I would say Boy Scouts. Boy Scouts was cool then, but
well, see,
it was like that was the thing to do in Laurenberg. But
when I was in Boy Scouts in Tarboro, it was like I remember all we did was it was like who could build the biggest campfire, and I was like, all right, well,
terrible idea. I remember one. Yeah, I remember those. Yeah, I won't mention any names, but those. Probably a half-acre fire from one of these fire competitions, but bad idea.
The people who grew up in the West are hearing us talking about. Yeah, I was also involved in about an acre forest fire out in Edgecombe County, North Carolina, and that's not a laughing matter in the West.
Yeah, totally, especially these days.
Oh man. Well, I got a few quick questions I like to ask everybody. If you got time, I'd love to run through those real quick.
Yeah.
What books do you read? I mean, I don't know if you read a lot, but it seemed like you may have some time when you're unplugged in these mountain valleys. I mean, are there any books that have been influential in your life and career? And sometimes I ask people to talk about books specifically about the West, but I feel like you've got such a broad perspective. I mean, what books have influenced you?
I read mostly nonfiction.
Same.
But I would say books, I wouldn't say they really influence me, but I would say once a year I probably read, I like Siddhartha, Herman Hesse.
Uh-huh.
It's a great book. Just about, it's kind of all encompassing about existence. I like that one. And then I really like Barry Lopez. He's a writer about the Arctic.
Yep.
And just how, I really enjoy seeing how humanity has learned to thrive in these high latitudes and these high altitudes. So I see that in the Himalayas, and also see that up in the Arctic with just that interaction and connection that necessary connection that people have to the land. So I really like his work, and his see some parallels kind of in my curiosity with the culture and with the natural history of the Arctic. And so I really like the way he puts words together.
I have not read much. I've never read one of his books. I've read some of his essays, and I would
say Arctic Dreams would be the one to check out.
Really?
People.
Okay.
Yeah, Arctic Dreams is pretty brilliant. So.
And I've got Siddhartha actually on my bedside table. I just found it at a used bookstore, and so I think I read it in college or something, but I don't remember it.
It's a quick one. It's a half-day read, or I think it's like 90 pages or something. But
sweet. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Any films? I mean, I know you're out in the middle of nowhere a lot of the time, but are there any films or documentaries or anything that you've enjoyed?
Documentaries. Nothing really comes to mind in terms of film. At the present
that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't watch a lot of movies. Yeah.
You ever seen Roadhouse?
It's funny. I'd say I quote unquote live under a rock, because like when the pandemic started last year, and I was in lockdown in Nepal, and I got my first Netflix subscription, and I was like, wow, look at all this. They're like, yeah, that's from like 12 years ago. I'm like, okay, fine. I could watch, anyway. Yeah. So I really don't watch a lot of movies, just because usually when I'm in town, it's a lot of time on the computer to figure out the logistics for the next trip. And so, I'm not sure I currently have a film recommendation. So.
No, that's refreshing to hear. I like hearing that. So this is an interesting question. I bet it's going to be hard to answer, but you think about everything you've done, everywhere you've been. Is there one experience that stands out as being the most powerful experience you've had outdoors? I mean, I can't imagine your standard of powerful or hardcore or whatever is so far beyond anything I can understand. But like, and it doesn't have to be like an adventure thing. It could just be a cool moment. But does any experience or group of experiences stand out as being the most powerful?
I think it's just really seeing people living in these harsh climates and thriving. Seeing this strong. I don't have a specific example, but just the community is really the communities in the mountains of the Himalayas are really strong. So they really they plant the fields together. They work their animals together, and there's a lot of they celebrate together. They just the villages are very tight and interwoven, and that's really had a big impression on me in these, very wild, they have massive glaciers hanging above the village and big snowstorms, and it's a tough place to live. And just I'm always inspired by the people there and their just contentment and happiness with very few material things. Yeah. So I would say the people are really that's the most impressionable experience I've had in the mountains. So
I think that's really interesting and something people should really note, because, you've done these just unbelievable adventures all over, but it comes back to the people in the community. I think there's
absolutely.
I love hearing that. That's really cool. Kind of last question is, I started this podcast on a whim, and it's just crazy the kind of the community that's built up around it. But I'd say if there's a common thread, it's a love of the West and what that means, the landscapes, the people, all the different, aspects of it. And you're obviously deeply connected to the West, and then you go out and do your own thing. But kind of everything you've seen, do you have any parting words of wisdom for the folks who listen to this thing?
Words of wisdom.
Yeah, that's the problem. And I say this every time, but everybody I talk to is really humble. And so they're always like, I'm not qualified to give any words of wisdom, but you are. As an old friend, I'm asking you, I need your words of wisdom.
Yeah, I would say, just say, do what you like to do. If you have a dream of something that you really want to do, I would find a way to pursue it. And, I would say that. Yeah, that's all.
I like it, man. I like it a lot. Yeah. And I would say the other thing you're saying without saying is to be humble. Because I would say that's what's coming through with you is just a level of humility that's really refreshing and a level of curiosity, which I love. So those are both two things that I strive for. So man, I'm really glad to chat with you. As I said before, I'm proud of everything you've done. It's really awesome. And so I'll look forward to seeing where things continue to go for you.
It's great to catch up with you, Ed. Yeah. And let's go hike a peak sometime.
All right, if you could be patient with me, I'll do it. You gotta be very patient.
Sounds good.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I know your time is valuable, so it means the world that you spend it listening. If you want to support the podcast and help it to continue to spread and grow, there are a few ways you can help. Number one, pass it along to a friend or share it on social media. Word of mouth recommendations are the most powerful way for ideas to spread, so I'd love it if you could share the podcast with a few pals who might enjoy it. Number two, you go to Apple Podcasts and give it a 5-star review. Good reviews encourage the Apple overlords to suggest the podcast to others. So there's a link in the notes if you'd be so kind as to give it 5 stars. Number three, you can support the podcast financially via Patreon, and there are exclusive benefits for those who do, including a monthly behind-the-scenes newsletter, Mountain and Prairie stickers, live and recorded video chats with podcast guests, and much more. Number four, I've also got 2 emails that I send out. The first is my weekly email called Good News from the American West, which I send out every Wednesday. It's only positive news, something we can all use a little more of these days. And my other email is my bi-monthly book recommendations email. One email every other month with 5, 6, 7, or 8 books that I've recently read and highly recommend. The thousands of people on both of these lists will vouch for me. No spam or other funny business. And number 5, finally, Check out my online store for Mountain and Prairie stickers, shirts, and coffee mugs. I've got some really cool designs from Western artists with more on the way, so head to mountainandprairie.com/shop to check it all out. I'd love to connect with you. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, so look me up on either of those platforms by my name or through the links on my website. All right, that's it. Thanks so much for your support.